Hi everyone. How does closing 3 oyster bays in the state of Texas not only affect the oyster industry, but our local communities in the state? Well, today I'm going to interview Lisa Halili, owner of Prestige Oysters, and Brad Boney, Mediation and Government Affairs. We're going to talk about what is happening right now that you need to be aware of. We're going to give you information to show you how you can get involved and let your voice be heard on this very important topic. So stay tuned. My interview begins right now. Hi everybody, this is Kelly Williams with The Kelly Williams Show in Bay Area Houston Magazine, and we are right here at Prestige Oysters with Lisa Halili, one of the owners, and also Brad Boney. He is in Mediation and Government Affairs. Okay, first of all, Lisa, how long have y'all had Prestige Oysters?
Since 2001.
Wow. Brad, what do you actually do as a mediator?
So in mediation, I utilize my mediation skills in helping put divergent groups together to craft a mutually agreeable settlement. People are familiar with mediation and divorce,
Yeah.
civil, much is the same, and it's a useful tool in government to craft a bill that's acceptable to everyone. Not necessarily makes everyone happy, but heading in the right direction.
Wonderful. Lisa, we've known each other for a while now, and Prestige Oysters is known by so many people. What do you think, really quickly, has been the most important part about your family having Prestige Oysters?
The most important part about Prestige Oysters, which I think is very unique, is that we've learned so much over the years about sustainability and how there's a difference of oystering. You know, some people can eat the oysters just like they are, and some can't. So we invested, we have a high pressure processing machine, and then we freeze the oyster too. So throughout the years, I think the main thing that's so important when you look at Prestige Oysters is look at our goals that we're achieving. We just keep going up and up and up. The Marine Steward Council having an MSC award, being only 6th in the world.
Wow.
That is amazing.
That is amazing.
But that shows we care, and it's sustainability. Our fishermen care, or the people who, the people won't say our fishermen because they're not our fishermen, but they're like family.
That's
you know what I'm
right.
saying?
That's right.
Like
exactly.
You grow up with them and you become family.
That's right. Well, today we are talking about a really, really important issue that not only affects the oyster industry, it affects our communities, in our entire state. Today we are talking about a proclamation that is to close 3 oyster bays: Ayers Bay, Mesquite Bay, and Carlos Bay. And why is this important that the community understands what is happening right now with this? Lisa, tell us a little bit about why is it important that these bays do not get shut?
The importance is that you need these public bays. If there really is a reason to close them, the industry will go in and they will work with Parks and Wildlife to do that. If there's a sanctuary reason, and they're not talking about a temporary closure, they're talking about a permanent closure. And these bays are very resilient. They were shut down in 2017 under the traffic light system and reopened in 2019. So after 2 years, guess what? Mother Nature, she does her thing. She produces more oysters. And to say that the reasoning they want to close them because of the style or the shape of the reef, we have to understand we are in the Gulf of Mexico. We're in a cove. We're not on the East Coast where you have the ocean seaboard. So the vertical pattern that they're claiming that they need to close it down for, we have other bays that have been closed and have never opened. Why don't they have these vertical reefs?
Exactly.
It's not going to happen.
No. And Brad, that's what I want to ask you about. I'd like you to tell everybody, what Lisa just said. why are you closing these bays? There are bays that have been closed before for necessity. What is the difference?
Well, I think the real frustrating part about this is that Texas Parks and Wildlife has not included industry in any of this. They've completely shut it out. There is one group in particular, an NGO, who devised the scheme, who pushed the scheme that became the proclamation that Texas Parks and Wildlife did, without including the Oyster Advisory Board. The Oyster Advisory Board is made up of stakeholders, fishermen, people who fish the reefs, who live it. We've got third, fourth, fifth, sixth generation oystermen that were never advised on this, that know the waters far better than anyone else who's come here, whether it's college or otherwise, with the institutional knowledge. And the frustrating part is for Texas Parks and Wildlife to devise a plan and not include industry that can offer good insight. Everyone's on the same page. We all want more oyster. We need more oysters. Yeah. Since 2008, Hurricane Harvey, we have not recovered to the levels before. No. Whether it's whatever reason, we haven't done that. The industry is looking to increase the opportunity for greater harvest, wants to see it happen, and by cutting and shutting the bays and pinching them back isn't going to work. The other challenge with that is when they cut and pinch them back, you have less areas that you have the ability to oyster. So what happens is everyone that has an oyster license, they're going to go there and they're going to fish it, they're going to hammer it, and it presents other problems. 10% spread out is far easier than 90% in one area, if that makes sense. And it's sort of
what we're trying to say is that if you look at data, if you just look at history, Parks and Wildlife has, under this traffic light system, kept bays closed. Like, for instance, TX4 is a very good, it has never been opened. How do this bay, they keep saying doesn't meet the threshold. It's not going to meet the threshold. Why doesn't it meet the threshold? It's not being cultivated. And the sad part about it, the way this traffic light works, they have to have a catch rate. But it's not so much the traffic light itself, it's the method of the sampling. And the industry was supposed to be, the way we understood it, a participant in the sampling. And we've asked them, let's put a game warden on the boat, take us to the reefs that you're not willing to open, and we'll show you there's oysters there.
Exactly.
And they're to say that, when you talk about stakeholders, so that's just really important. So we have major players. And like Brad said, only one person was involved in this.
Well, and before you go further, when we talk about people who are stakeholders in this happening of these three bays being closed, tell me about, in 2011, Senate Bill 932 was passed. And this was a confirmation that there are many parties that have to be talked to, people in the industry before things are done. Tell us what happened, because this should not be happening like this.
No, it shouldn't be, because, we used to have a dialogue with Parks and Wildlife. You can look through the emails, you can look at the drafts, we went back and forth, what's the best way, what will work for everybody. We used to have that dialogue. We don't have that dialogue anymore. And in that bill, it clearly states on line 21, the department shall consult with members of the oyster industry regarding the management of oyster beds in the state. And
I'll add on to that. So since COVID 2 years, there's an oyster advisory council that's made up of this group. They have met 2 times since COVID.
In 2 years, they only met twice.
We are familiar with video conferencing, whether it's Zoom, WebEx, or Microsoft Teams. It's easy to arrange that, and people can do it from home. But in 2 years, 2 meetings. Yeah. So obviously, it appears that there's a move to shut the commercial industry down. And I understand that there are people who believe that, look, fish, the only people who should eat fish are the ones that you catch, and that we want to leave it clean and pristine and not touched by human hands. And that's not a real expectation. The water belongs to all Texans. It belongs to all of us. I no longer go offshore. If I choose to buy my snapper from Katie Seafood, I should be able to do that as well as go offshore. There's a group that says me having the ability to buy it from Katie Seafood is wrong. it's still my fish. It's your fish, it's all of ours, and we should share it. And again, back to the point of is that the stakeholders, specifically the oyster industry, the folks that work, that harvest the oysters, should have a say in any plan or scheme that's devised by Texas Parks and Wildlife.
Absolutely. Well, and the thing is that Prestige Oysters, just for example, y'all have been responsible about making sure that the oyster reefs are clean and healthy, and and people do not. I want y'all to tell people, and I learned this a couple of years ago from Raz, your son, when he was on my show. What do oysters do? If people do not know, it's really amazing.
An oyster filters 50 gallons of water a day.
One oyster. And they put out 50, I don't know how many millions of spats, baby spats, one oyster can just put out. And so, the oyster being a filter feeder, it keeps our bay systems clean. But what people don't understand, if you don't cultivate a reef, if you just let a reef sit there and die, and the way they're talking, we want to see this vertical reef, what is that going to do? It's going to, in first place, we don't even see that happening, because and you're going to have slime, you're going to have silt, and you're going to have, the reef is going to die. And and just to tell everybody what is happening is that the reason they want to close these 3 bays is because they would like to see vertical oyster reefs.
Yeah, but this makes no sense when you've got 6 bays that you closed back in 2017, and ironically, one of the bays that was supposed to be closed, Keller Bay, is now a restoration site. And why would you want that to be a restoration site? Because it's surrounded by prohibited areas that you cannot fish. So that only creates problems for law enforcement. So why not take the 3 bays that you're looking and make them a restoration site? Because the dealers have to, by law, give back 1/3 of their catch. I brought in 11,000 tons Kentucky limestone last year to pay my bill. My bill was almost $1 million.
Amazing.
When we go back to Hurricane Ike, 2008, when it happened, it silted in a lot of the oyster beds. At that point in time, nothing was touched. So you've got oyster shell that's silted in, because we have a lot of silt in the bay, and it happens. Nobody was sent out to churn it up or rake it up. If you want to make your lawn greener, rake your lawn. If you want to, it's a good thing, and it would have helped to bring those oysters on the top side. Since then, we still haven't recovered to levels prior to that. To this day, we haven't. It's been an ongoing challenge, and again, if you talk to the industry and you talk to the NGOs, you talk to the environmental groups that are pushing this, we're all on the same page. We all want more oyster.
Right.
But shutting down one area that provides money for businesses to operate, that they in turn are going to invest and expand elsewhere. It's a great public-private partnership. It works.
And Parks and Wildlife is saying, well, the reason why we feel the need to close these 3 bays, because when the floodwaters come, these 3 bays always stay salty. The salinity level stays high because of the area that they're in. So in my mind, so you're telling me this is your safe haven, and that you need these to supply the other bays back when they get flooded out. Well, then why would you want to permanently close it? That makes no sense.
No.
Let us keep restoring it if that's the case. Because if you permanently close, then you're not going to have any babies, because it's going to silt over, like he's saying.
And oysters are particular. They're very particular on what it is. It can't be too salty, and it can't be too fresh. There's an area that they fall in. If it gets too salty, like drought, will kill oysters. Too much freshwater inflow, too much rain kills oysters.
Wow. And one of the issues is that a lot of times government, and it doesn't matter if it's federal, state, or local, has a tendency to make decisions for others without consulting the people that are closest to the problems or the issues that are happening. And this is one of those examples that's happening. A lot of people are going to say, how is this going to affect me? Really, I don't really ever pay attention to the oyster bays. I just like to go out and eat them. It's happy hour to me. Okay, well, guess what? Judge Mark Henry actually sent a letter.
Yes.
And even though these 3 bays are not in his area at all, Lisa, tell us a little bit about why would Judge Mark Henry need to send a letter stating his concerns about this?
I'm going to read you a statement from Tom Harvey from Parks and Wildlife. And Tom Harvey says, a spokesman for Texas Parks and Wildlife, says the agency has vested interest in restoring the oyster beds that were damaged during Hurricane Ike. And we all know Hurricane Ike was in Galveston County. They're filter feeders, which mean they naturally clean contaminations over the waters, Harvey says. Clean water is good business. Oysters are a $3 billion industry in Texas. Add in recreation, tourism, other businesses that rely on clean Gulf water is close to $20 billion.
This is right here.
This is right
how it
here in
affects
Galveston Bay.
so many people, guys. This is the industry of the oyster industry.
And so what Judge Henry is saying, that your Parks and Wildlife is not under this traffic light system, is keeping the bays closed in Galveston County. And we're not able to even cultivate them. And as long as they're closed, they're going to continue. Every time Parks and Wildlife takes a sample, oh, well, they don't meet the threshold. Well, they're never going to meet the threshold because you're killing our own bay by not allowing us to cultivate. You cannot ever hurt the reef. You hurt the reef by not cultivating it. And Judge Henry recognizes that. And what does an average fisherman do? They spend $18 to $25 a day. Think about that. They go to work. There's 3 guys, 4 guys sometimes. They go in a convenience store. You know, everybody's convenience store happy.
Yeah, exactly.
Can't walk in and walk out with just one Twinkie. No. They get off work. They got to go to the marine supply store. They stop at the local hamburger stop. They get gas. They feed into the community. And Judge Henry recognizes that. And it's sad because think about it. What's the one thing that comes to mind when people go, oh, I want to go to eat oysters from Texas? What do they say? Galveston Bay.
That's exactly right.
Yes, yes.
And
That's exactly right.
And
Yeah.
Judge Henry's other point about it is it's about killing this proclamation, bringing in the industry to negotiate, mediate out an agreement that everyone can get on board, which would prevent the problem that we're faced with right now, where it's a one rules, iron-fisted method, and we're not being heard on our section. And I really, truly appreciate Judge Henry for stepping into that.
Yes, and we want to thank Judge Henry so much because, you know, this is very, very important to have your elected officials to recognize that, hey, here's an industry within my district, and this is important to me, and these are the people within our county that are suffering from this. And you could be a waitress, or you could, you know, it doesn't.
Absolutely.
A shopper, or you know what, a store owner. I mean, marine supplies, shipyards, they don't understand. When you shut down, you got to understand a whole entire industry right now is shut down. The whole Texas industry. And if you listen to Parks and Wildlife, they'll beg to differ. Oh, we left 7 bays open. Those bays never have oysters. Ironically,
Unbelievable.
they'll never meet the threshold.
No.
How come they're not closed? If they're so conservationist, why are you leaving bays open that you're worried about fishermen may go touch that shell? Oh, but when you talk to Parks and Wildlife, did you sample that? Oh no, there's no oysters there. I'm like, so here you got a bay that's full of oysters, so we could be out there fishing. Oh, well, it's borderline. Well, if it's borderline, you won't open it, but if it's borderline, you close it. So
Yeah.
how does that work?
And
Yeah.
the other part about it is going back and touching base on HB 51. Texas Parks and Wildlife had a red light, yellow light, green
Yes.
light program. They
Okay.
go-
Brad, for people who do not know, which I want to understand, what is a red light, green light, yellow light program for the
Prior to
bays?
HB 51, Texas Parks and Wildlife monitored and opened and closed the bays. So they had a red light, yellow light, green light plan. Red light meant there wasn't enough harvestable size oysters in that area, so they shut the bays down.
Okay.
Yellow light means you're getting, green light, there was plenty. Under HB 51, when it was crafted, because Lisa and I and another group were there when we processed and worked through and got that bill into place. It put the onus on the fishermen. So if it's an undersized oyster, they have to throw it back. If they didn't throw it back, it's a Class A misdemeanor. Class A is misdemeanor's pretty stiff. It's close to felony, right? 3 times, lose your license, nobody goes there. And the purpose was to put the onus on the fishermen to self-regulate. So a fisherman's fishing an area, and he's pulling up, and if he pulls up nothing but undersized oysters, the cost of his goods, his crew, his fuel, he's gonna put everything together, back it up, and go home, because he's not gonna fish it. And that was the intent. From our understanding, HB 51, it was self-regulatory. Now,
Yeah.
we've got Texas Parks and Wildlife that goes along one chosen area in a reef. And you might be talking about 500, 600, 700 acres of reef. That comes back and says, well, they're all undersized. We're gonna shut it down. Well, maybe that one area that they fished or sampled is. What about other areas? If under the premise of HB 51, a fisherman can go out and explore that, and if he finds it, he can harvest it and bring those back and sell them so that they end up at our restaurants. And that was the beautiful part about it. Texas Parks and Wildlife now is back with the red light. It's more like red light and green light.
Yeah.
It's shut it down in that. The other challenge we'll run into is when Texas Parks and Wildlife shuts down several areas, it pushes everyone into a smaller area. So then, if somebody were looking to make the industry look bad, that's what they'd want to promote, because you've got people that are make their livelihood. Again, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th generation oystermen. That they all go down to that area to fish it because they're providing a livelihood. Shuts it down and puts in the area, and everyone gets flared up. 4 years ago, we went through that with Christmas Bay, and the industry went forward and pushed
Yes,
for the closure
we
of
pushed.
Christmas Bay ourselves. That was over almost 600 acres that the industry said this needs to be closed down. Christmas Bay
advocated
is
it.
on the
Which
other
is
side
how
of
it
the same
should
road.
be.
Yeah.
It needs to be coming from the
exactly.
industry
It was from the
itself.
industry. We actually signed on, and I have it here, where the industry had an industry proposal. I even wrote a long letter to the director myself of Prestige Oysters, and we all requested, and it wasn't just one bay. Actually, again, when you look back, look at the bays that were supposed to be closed.
Wow.
Wow.
Amazing.
And amazing, look at this, Keller Bay. Keller Bay did not get closed. Keller Bay was removed. That is so frustrating. Why would you want Keller Bay? And when you look here, here's Keller Bay. Anything like this means it's prohibited. So why do you want to restore this? And that's what the dealers, they want dealers to put shell here, and it's right on top of a prohibited area. That's going to cause problems for the game wardens. Why not go ahead, like I said before, and restore these bays?
Absolutely.
And then also, when we talk about not talking with stakeholders, they want to cut TX25 and just take an area of it and close it. So the health department was not consulted in this. So and the GLO wasn't consulted. And why? And the local officials. Look what the city of Seadrift, they did a proclamation. This has literally almost bankrupt this little bitty town. How many people are going to go to Seadrift? They live off the commercial fishing industry. They have one laundromat. They have one restaurant.
Amazing.
They have one little hotel. They got a gas station. And this little bitty tiny town prays for when the season opens and the fisherman comes
Absolutely.
in.
Absolutely.
Texas
And-
Parks and Wildlife, under this program, the
Yes.
proclamation says there's no financial impact.
Yes, that's another thing. If you go to what it clearly says, what we have that. Let me see. There's somewhere, yes, right here. So read that to them. That's what we're being accused of, and they have no scientific data, and that's just what they listen to.
Further, the department has been contacted by members of the public concerning that the structured integrity of the habitat in this complex has been degraded by oyster harvest effort in terms of physical structure and vertical relief.
And look, on their own website, they clearly state they do not have the independent assessment to be closing these bays. No data to back it up. And if you go to their website, that's one thing that Judge Henry realized under the law, and Judge Henry cites the law. He clearly cites it in his letter. Under Texas Regulatory 734 Rule 558.21, the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department is having a significant negative impact on Texas oyster industry, small businesses, and hardworking families in Galveston County. So what they're doing, because it states here under Section 76.021F, the Texas Government Code states the department shall consult with members of the oyster industry regarding management of the oyster beds in the state. So what Judge Henry is saying, you didn't consult with anybody. You got this letter that came November 11th
Yeah.
and went to Mr. Alpine Beaver, or is it? Yeah.
So that's the only person that was
Alpine.
They
contacted.
went to all commissioners, but it was directed towards him as chairman. He's
Okay.
He's the
currently.
chairman.
Okay.
And so.
Wait, he's the chairman of what?
Texas Parks and
Okay.
Wildlife. They're commissioners that are appointed by the governor.
Okay.
Of course, he owns Buc-ee's also.
Absolutely.
Yes, he owned Buc-ee's. And so, it would be the same thing like if somebody said to him, I think Brad's the one that told me that, okay, Mr. Beaver, the TCEQ is going to regulate how much gas you can pump a day. So
That's
we're going to
exactly right.
restrict the amount of gas that you can sell to the public.
Yeah.
I mean, you're micromanaging Mother Nature, first place.
And again, going back to the law, HB 51, undersized oysters are the key point, and the undersized oysters, if somebody's caught selling, harvesting undersized oysters, that's a Class A misdemeanor.
That's right. There's already laws on the books
Yes.
that protects
Yes.
protects people and fines them from selling undersized oyster to protect the oyster reefs. There's when government starts dictating to industries on what they can and cannot do, especially when an industry has been so responsible and such a
Yes.
big part of helping the industry grow and taking care of these communities that rely on this business. Why would you want to start eliminating things that it's going fine? It's going fine.
Yeah.
I mean, y'all have proven that you've already helped close bays that needed to be
Yeah.
closed.
Yes.
But you've got to contact and talk to and bring into the discussion people who are dealing with these issues and these problems and a part of the solution when you make these decisions. And this is what the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department is not doing.
And going back to the Christmas Bay, when that was shut down, we approached Texas Parks and Wildlife and said, we believe it needs to be shut down.
Yes.
We got support from Commissioner Dudepayne and
Yes.
County Judge Matt Sebesta, who agreed with us because it was horrible what was happening there. And we went, got it done. That was going back again on industry, and industry, oystermen said, this is an important area, we need to preserve it, we need to protect it.
And there were other bay systems like Parks and Wildlife purchased Paddlehorn Lake, and so they're going to turn that to a wildlife refuge. They're going to make it into like some type of, I guess, where people can go out tourism and visit this kind of like little island out there.
Yeah.
And so we are conservationists. I mean, your commercial fishermen are probably the biggest conservationists you're going to have because they want to keep their tomorrow. Their future relies on what they put back in the bay.
Absolutely.
To put the shell, when you see all the white spots on the oysters, that's because they're knocking off those undersized oysters. And one thing I want to point out to the general public, please understand, it's not the law enforcement. This has nothing to do with your local game warden. Watch your Lone Star show, support your local game wardens. This is not their decision. They don't do this. This is all coastal fishery doing that. And what a lot of people don't understand, Parks and Wildlife is made up of coastal fishery, your law enforcement, the game wardens, and then your marine eco lab. So the person making the decision falls within Austin and coastal fisheries. Now, do coastal fisheries ever come down to the district and go out in the bay? I have no
Obviously
idea.
not.
Yeah, because if they did, they would hear the industry's cries. And so when I was asked I feel like the game wardens, if all the bays were open, could they manage the resource? Could they protect the resource? And I said, absolutely. Our game wardens do an outstanding job.
Yeah.
And I never want to take away from them. And if
Absolutely.
anybody said anything different, I mean, I would argue with them tooth and nail. The game wardens do their jobs. I mean, sometimes they do it too good. You know, there'd be some vessels where they get checked 3 times a day because it's different game wardens, and you're like, I can't even work, I just got checked, you know? But the point that I'm trying to make, the general public can help. You've got to understand, under your Texas Constitution, it clearly states that the government agency can manage the resource. Think of Texas Parks and Wildlife as a banker. The owner of the bank will give the president of the bank the keys to the bank. He entrusts with that bank to have all the money that's in his safe. He's not giving you the keys so you can go in there and take what you feel like or manage it how you feel like it. He's entrusting in you because he believes you're the best safekeeper. You're the best person to watch over this. Well, your government agency is the same thing. Texas Parks and Wildlife is a trustee for a public resource. They are to manage it, but not to micromanage it so bad that you completely put an industry out of business and kill a reef by not letting it be cultivated.
And
Absolutely.
the other thing to chime on that is where does it end? So the only way that the state would be able to build a refuge reef, it has to be done legislatively enacted in law through a bill. Well, you get into a situation where there's sort of, Texas Parks and Wildlife is sort of saying, well, okay, these folks aren't allowed to do it, but everyone else can. Well, what's the next step after that? So will that affect wade fishermen? Will that affect drift fishermen? And I might add, speaking personally, the first time I saltwater fished was 1983. It was over Hannah's Reef, right over here. You're looking at one of the leaseholders of Hannah's Reef, and Hannah's Reef to this day, you can still fish on top of it.
Yep.
It still works. It's still productive. And I want to emphasize on that. That's about good stewardship, and that's what the industry is about. They understand that
Absolutely.
they have to invest back into it to ensure that they've got a livelihood, so that 4th generation owner can pass it on to his 5th generation owner and the 6th generation owner.
Absolutely. Lisa and Brad, what do y'all want to have happen from here? What is your goal right now?
Our goal is to educate the general public, to let them understand there are abundance amount of market-sized oysters. There are game wardens that can enforce it, that all the bays can be open under House Bill 51, and that before the commission, we want this tabled, closing these 3 bays, and we want to have a diplomatic conversation. We want to bring stakeholders together. We want to talk to different agencies, because if they're really looking to restore, under General Land Office, they actually have funding set up, grant money, to do restoration on oyster beds. And
Amazing.
these folks, and you've got to talk to your local, you've got to talk to your state representative, you've got to bring in your senator and your county judge and your mayor, because the community has to matter. I mean, just like when you're talking a little bitty town like Seadrift or like San Leon,
Yeah.
these gas stations, oh my God, when November 1 and oyster season are like, woo, you know, here comes the fishermen, the white boot fishermen.
Absolutely.
So we want the general public to understand, yes, there's oysters all up and down the coast. Will we hurt the reefs? No. You never can hurt the reefs. You hurt the reefs by not cultivating them. Why?
Absolutely.
They slime, they silt, they got sand. How many of you own a pier and your pylons don't have barnacles and that slime growing on them? Well, think about that. Because the pylon stays in the water and it never gets touched.
Yeah.
Well, the oyster reef's the same way. They're honestly destroying our bays.
Yeah.
And I think the other portion of that is, it's about a bigger picture that this state can do better than how it is currently doing with the way that we're managing our oysters. We want to grow it. Everyone's on the same page. Everyone agrees with that. Let's get a group around the table and let's talk about it. Let's get recreational fishermen. Let's get other NGOs. Let's get the oystermen
Universities
and to sit around and cultivate a plan and put together a plan that will work for everyone to rebuild the reefs that we're still short of, that we still haven't replenished since Hurricane Ike in 2008. It needs to be done.
Absolutely.
It's time. It's time.
And Kelly,
Yes.
on the weekends, we can't oyster. We're not allowed to. That's the law. We can
Okay.
only oyster Monday through Friday. So what my husband does, he'll allow us fishermen. They have these bags on the dredge that catch the oyster. They have dredges that don't have the bag, and they'll have them go out on our private beds and just keep making circles all day long, paying them to cultivate the reef. All they're doing is all day long making circles to keep the reefs turned over. I mean, so
Amazing.
that's what we're saying, like TX2 and 3 and 7 that have never came back, that they're leaving open because they know there's no oysters.
Yeah.
Okay, why not pay? Because the dealers paying in this money, these fishermen also on the weekends could get paid through the state to go out and do the exact same thing and turn the reef over.
And there's money.
Yes,
For
and
that
the
they can hire
industry-
these
There were reefs in the same area.
Yeah.
After a Hurricane
They need
Hurricane
to
Ike
be-
that never came back. Yet
Yeah.
Wow.
the private, which they can work differently outside of the state rules
Yeah.
and state regulations because of the lease,
Yeah.
that are still that are producing great today and still being managed. The other areas that are outside that weren't leased aren't so, which brings up another issue. The state of Texas has 22,800 acres,
Has 2,400 acres.
2,400 acres of private lease.
And those 2,400 acres make up 22% of the catch of the whole entire state of Texas.
Oh my goodness.
So we obviously aren't too dumb.
No, absolutely.
We're little oyster people here know a little bit of something.
Well, and the thing
And the
is,
first reefs to recover after Hurricane Ike
were the private reefs.
absolutely.
And we did, and Louisiana gets 27-something million dollars from Ike. Texas only gets $7 million. I mean, how does that work? I don't know. And then, so the Parks and Wildlife did pay the industry to go out and, like I said, do bagless dredging. We took turns. They had a rotation system. There's money. I mean,
Federal
GLO's got
grant
tons
money.
of grant money. I mean, I looked this up. When I saw them, like, these are key stakeholders. They're like, grant money. You want to build an oyster reef? Hello, we're over here.
it's good for the environment
Yeah.
and the community and the
Yeah.
state.
And-
Why is it not being used? And this is
Yes,
very
and
interesting
this was
that they are
what-
wanting to close
Yeah.
3 bays that have nothing to do with anything that they're even talking about.
Yeah.
It's really odd, really incredible, and it's a shame. Lisa and Brad, I want to ask you, how can the public help? What can we
Good
do
question.
as just,
Public comment, let your
Regular
opinion be
people.
known.
Okay.
Public comment, let your opinion be known.
okay.
Yes, so you can go to this website, and this first section up here, you have to go to the website and go Thursday's commission meeting, register the form. They will actually give you, with your email, they'll give you a telephone number and an access code, and you'll be able to call into the meeting. If you don't want to make a public comment, you can just go to the website, go to Seafish, and you can mark that you oppose it. You can say, if you can also submit a public comment, but you can also speak at the hearing. If you
And
just
you
want to
can
watch
you can
it.
Google it up through
Yes.
Texas Parks and Wildlife Commission hearing March 23rd and 24th.
Yeah.
The 23rd is a workshop, the 24th is the actual hearing.
Yeah, the
Where they're gonna bring
24th
this
is the
proclamation.
actual
Okay.
day.
Is
So you
the
can
workshop
Google it.
open to the public?
Yes.
Yes, you can.
And that's in
watch-
Austin?
Yes.
Yeah, well, it's in Austin, yes.
Okay.
And you can watch it through teleconference. You just got to go online and
Okay.
register.
The workshop, they don't allow public comment. The commission hearing, which they take
Yes.
what they've devised at the workshop, then go before the commission hearing. That's when public,
Okay.
you have a right to
And then what
express
I
your
will
opinions.
do, I will scan all these and I'll put all this information up on Facebook. I'll put this
And we
on.
will share it on the Kelly Williams Show?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And guys, if you look right here, the website of what to do is actually listed right here on the show for you to be a part of this if you want to, or give your thought. Brad, as part of mediation and things like this, what is your advice to somebody in the public who wants to give their opinion or their thought? What should people call in and say, or what should they call their elected officials and say? What the Texas Parks and Wildlife? What do we need to exactly say to these people to get the point across?
On it, when you if you go to the website and you log in, it gives you, are you for it or against it, or
Okay.
questionable on it. Check that, and there's an area for comment. And the ask is real simple. It's not kill it, be done with it. You guys don't know what you're talking about. Get out of here. It's what we're asking for is to table the proclamation to allow groups together, people with stakeholders together, to devise and work out a plan that's good for the state.
Okay.
We're asking
and
for
to get everyone on
diplomatic
board.
solution.
Absolutely.
And you know what?
And to collaborate on an effective solution to address the real problem that we have, which is we're still haven't recovered from Hurricane Ike.
Exactly,
Absolutely.
and there's so much that can be done here in Galveston Bay, and like I said, dealers fund that, we pay that, the fishermen, your local fishermen pay that too, because every harvester tag, the state gets 20 cents. 20 cents, and is earmarked only for oyster restoration. So the funding is there, and
Absolutely.
there's also other nonprofits that are not for profit. And a lot of people don't understand that, but these NGOs that are trying to close these bays down are nonprofit for profit. What does that mean? That means that they're a nonprofit organization that has this huge board and everybody gets paychecks. They get paid to collect money for the nonprofit. So I understand that, but in my mind, we would want universities or people that are nonprofits not to profit. Because if you're not profiting from it, you're doing it from the goodness of your heart and you really want to make a difference. You know, there's got to be that, like Brad's saying, we just need to talk. We don't want to make rash decisions, because once you make something permanent, it's
tough
done.
to, that's right.
It's
You know, and Lisa and Brad, and the point that we want to make sure that the public understands about this, that's what's happening, is that it's not that there aren't bays that need to be closed or have already been closed. It's the point that the Texas Parks and Wildlife are shutting down bays without even consulting the people in the oyster industry that deal with these issues and problems, and there's been no voice from you at all. And this is why we need your help in the public to get this information out. And please, if you are able to call in or be a part of the video, or you're in Austin, or you can drive to Austin that day, go and listen, be a part of this problem. This is not just an industry issue. This affects
the whole
so many jobs,
community.
Our communities, and there will be little small towns that are actually going to have to shut down because their livelihood is taken away. Government overreach is never good when you're trying to dictate to somebody when you really don't know the issues and what is happening from your decision. You're just asking for a voice to be heard.
Exactly. And you know, we used to have a voice. We used to be, our director retired. And since our director retired,
Texas Parks and Wildlife Director.
our voice has been silent. And he was the most unbiased person. I mean, but the one thing I can say about that director, he always consulted with the workshop. He always consulted with the health department, the GLO. He brought in other stakeholders, and he wanted to hear what everybody had to say. And the one thing that was so great about him, love him or dislike him, we could always agree to disagree, but we knew what was coming.
Absolutely.
Kelly, we didn't even know this. And
When did you find this out?
We found this out,
Yeah.
I have an email
It
where...
was around Thanksgiving.
No. We had gotten this letter around Thanksgiving, but we had no idea about them wanting to put this on an agenda. And I'm begging my health lady, the people over there. We found out on January 14th when we finally got the agenda.
Incredible.
And they allowed one meeting,
Yeah.
and one meeting from the Oyster Advisory Workshop, and it had already been drafted. They were already working on it. And the
Yeah.
response from Texas Parks and Wildlife, if you don't like it, you have the ability to go before public comment. And again, going back to the other bill previously, the industry should have been consulted on the
Yes,
front end.
because it's
Absolutely.
in law, and that law is still in effect.
That's right.
And
And
guess
from
what?
2011.
Oh, and
It's there.
oh, get this.
Unbridled government is unchecked government, and that's the biggest risk. And here's the other part, and I'm not saying it, but just, if they start in this area, where will it end?
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Does it end with
The
inevitably
dominoes are
it'll
just
fall
gonna
down
keep
on the
falling.
recreational fishermen and the rest? Because there is a move of individuals that don't want hunting and fishing or removal of any natural product on any land.
Yeah. But what they, and what we hope people understand from this is that it's good.
Yeah.
It's good to,
We're actually doing a good thing.
to get oyster. I mean, you're supposed to do that because that's how they replenish and help
Yes.
and help keep the waters clean. And do everything. So this is it's just heartbreaking to me that this is happening.
It is
You know, and like Brad said, where does it end? Where does government overreach end in the fishing industry if this is allowed to go through unchecked?
Yeah.
There's no limit, and this is why we live in this free country. You can disagree and fight back and ask questions of what your government's decisions are, and that's what it's supposed to be like. And this is how you can help the oyster industry
And
that
we're-
is affecting
And
everything.
we're fortunate that we have good legislative support here in Galveston County from Judge Mark
Yes.
Henry.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you so much.
Current state representative who's running for Senator Mays Middleton.
Thank you, Mays,
Briscoe
yes.
came, who's also stepped in because Mays' seat is, nobody's sure who's going to
Yes.
replace him. But everyone has followed through this, and we're fortunate to live in Galveston County that we have this, and it's important. Again, unbridled government is unchecked government.
Absolutely. Okay, so one more time, what is your hope to happen starting today, moving forward with this?
I would just want the general public to get the vision that commercial fishermen do a good thing. We can't harm the bays. All we can do is enhance them. We can cultivate them and clean them and keep them healthy. By law, we can't catch a small oyster. So it doesn't matter how many small oysters are there, you can't do it. Nobody's gonna risk going, like Brad said, get a Class A misdemeanor or get a Class even B misdemeanor, have everybody go to jail. And we would pray that the commissioners would hear this and understand that only one party was consulted. And that's so unfair. And we're just asking for a voice. We're just asking for a diplomatic solution. Let's table this. Let's bring, and what people need to understand, this is your resource too. If you have a sports fisherman license, you're allowed to catch 2 sacks of oysters. So this affects you too. And that's what we're trying to tell. This resource is a public resource. And it should not be taken away from the people of the state of Texas.
Absolutely. Guys, if you live in the Bay Area, if you visit the Bay Area, if you enjoy any of the amazing things that living by Galveston Bay has, this affects you. This affects so many people, jobs and opportunities. It doesn't just affect one little part of our community. It is a ripple effect that is going to happen if this stays. Lisa, I want to tell you thank you so much for everything that your family has done with Prestige Oysters in the community and the government, in trying to make sure that things are done the right way and always really being stewards of our bay and of our community. Brad, thank you so much for taking time to be with us today. We are hoping that this moves forward in a positive way and that your voice is heard. Guys, you can be a part of this. You can help. If you look at the email and the website that is going to be listed right here, that is right here on this video, contact them. If you have questions, can they contact you individually if they have questions about what they were seeing on the show today?
Yes.
Most certainly.
Yes.
Okay, we will, you can contact them. Their emails are listed right here, or how to contact them. And Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, Kelly,
For
for
doing
putting
this
this
today.
together and
Thank you.
taking your time out. I mean,
Absolutely.
God bless you. You
Brad.
make a huge, huge difference because you're a way that people like us can get our voice out there. And maybe there will be, because I've been saying to a lot of people, what do you think? And I said, I don't see any light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
It's sad. And I said, I don't want this to happen.
Well, I am just grateful and honored that I was able to talk to you both today about this issue, and hopefully bring it to many, many people,
Yes.
and let you know what is happening,
Yes.
because this affects all of us.
Yes.
And so, guys, if you want to be a part of this, please click on the links below and make your voice be heard, because overreaching government is something that affects everyone, and it's happening quickly, and we need to stop it and let the voices be heard of the people that are dealing closest to the issues. And this is how things get better and things work better. So thank you guys so much for today. Thank you guys for watching the Kelly Williams Show. We're right here on Facebook and YouTube every week, and we hope you have an awesome and blessed rest of your day. Please, please help us make a difference with this issue. And if you have questions, you can DM us right here on the Kelly Williams Show, and we'll connect you with whoever you need to, or you can contact Lisa or Brad directly. And please share this show, and we hope you all have a blessed and awesome rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.